Hello, this is Paul from FMA Performance, and today we're going to look at why I program heavy singles on a pretty regular basis. This is a concept that I picked up from Reactive Training Systems and Barbell Medicine. They both use heavy singles regularly in their programming, and it got me thinking about my own programming. As I started to implement heavy singles into my own training and then into the training of others, I was able to see immediate benefits that we will talk about today. Now, I'm talking about heavy singles. I'm referring to one rep at an RPE of somewhere between 7 and 9. I'm not talking about doing full, max out, teeth grinding singles here. Most singles I program are either 7 or 8, with an occasional 9 thrown in there, especially as we get closer to maxing out or closer to a meet. A single at this weight is heavy enough to make you focus and perform, but not heavy enough that it's going to be too physically demanding. A single at an 8 will allow you to work with some heavy weight without causing too much stress on the body. As we talked about in the RPE blog, we are not great at measuring RPE until we're 2 reps or less away from failure. This would be at about an RPE 8. So by pushing to an RPE 8, we can be pretty confident that this weight is an accurate display of our strength for that day. So now we've talked about exactly what a heavy single is, let's look at why they're important. I feel heavy singles are important for 3 reasons. The first being that singles are a skill that need to be practiced. Second, by starting our training with a heavy single, we can see where we're at that day and make sure that our volume work is at the proper intensity. And lastly, heavy singles allow us to accurately track progress. So let's first look at heavy singles being a skill that needs to be practiced. I think this is the biggest benefit that many people overlook. I often see people able to rep out like 90 to 95% of their max, and then they make like a 5-pound jump and they can't even do a single rep. That's because the strength's there, but the skill of doing a single isn't there. To successfully perform a heavy single, everything needs to be spot on. You need to be focused and your technique needs to be on point. As the weights get heavier, those little technique flaws start to come out. You also need to be able to brace maximally and create more tension than you would at a lighter weight. The ability to brace and create tension is a skill that needs to be practiced, and the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. The ability to concentrate and put all your strength into one rep is definitely a skill that also gets better as you practice. There's also a large neurological component into performing a successful single. More or less, you need to get your nervous system used to producing the amount of force that you're asking of it. You need to get your nervous system efficient at firing all at once and being able to maximally produce force. Furthermore, practicing singles helps psychologically. You get more exposure to heavy weights, and these weights become less intimidating. Your mental state before a lift goes a long way into determining the success or not of that lift. If you go into a lift with fear and you're not confident in the weight and you step under it and you're kind of scared and you're like, oh man, that's heavy, I haven't felt that weight before, the chances are the lift isn't going to be too successful. But with constant exposure to heavy singles, you get used to these heavy weights and they become less and less intimidating. You become confident when you get under the bar and you're ready to attack the weight. This confidence will go a long way into being successful with your heavy lifts. Lastly, if you compete in the sport of powerlifting, or if you just enjoy watching your maxes go up and lifting heavy, then heavy singles are about as sport specific as it gets. If the sport is powerlifting, in competition, you do singles. So it would make sense that in training you would want to practice these singles. It doesn't get much more sport specific than that. Next, we'll look at how heavy singles allow you to make sure that you're working at the proper intensity each and every day. Our strength varies from day to day, and by starting your training with a heavy single, you can get a pretty good idea of where your strength is at on that particular day. We talked earlier about how we are pretty good at determining the RPE of a lift if we are within 2 reps of failure. And a heavy single at 8 is heavy enough to accurately see where our strength is at without causing too much stress to the system. Based on this information, we can get a good idea of what our estimated 1 rep max is for the day, and we can base our percentages or our rep work off that number as opposed to a max that you may have found weeks ago or months ago, and on that particular day you may be feeling stronger or you may be feeling not as strong as you were the day that you performed that max. But when you do the single at an 8, you know that's where your strength is that day, and you can auto-regulate your training based on that. Lastly, heavy singles allow you to track your progress. This one's pretty straightforward. When performing singles each week at a similar effort, you can look at these numbers and see if you're making progress. These numbers should be trending upwards over the weeks, and if they're not, then you know something's wrong. You know you need to go back and look at your programming or your fatigue management and change something up so that the numbers start to trend upwards. It is also very nice to kind of be able to see this on a week-to-week basis, because you can make changes in your program quicker than you would otherwise. You can look at your lifestyle factors and see if anything is holding you back there. And then when it comes time to max out, you have a pretty good idea of where you're at, and you won't have to really guess on your weight selections. You'll have a ballpark idea of where you're at, and you can kind of shoot for that. So now that we've looked at what a heavy single is and why they are important, I encourage all of you to try and add some heavy singles to your training and use them as a benchmark for that day, and let me know how it goes.